that Biden got. But when it looked like he was going to win, I think the Democratic establishment rallied around Biden as their last hope because they couldn't allow a guy like Sanders. And again, I wasn't a big Sanders fan. I mean, but he seemed a little bit more honest about his socialism than the rest of them that were trying to cover it up. But he would have been a terrible president. But he wasn't like an establishment guy. He wasn't a party player. And so the Democratic Party didn't want him to be president. And so when it looked like he would probably get the nomination, they kind of fixed it so that Biden would get it. Because Biden was a guy that they can control. He was Mr. Establishment. I don't know if they knew how much he was on the take or how much the big guy made. In fact, there's these new rumors now about some $10 million bribe that was split between Hunter and the big guy. I don't know if that's the newest one. I mean, most of this stuff is probably true. In fact, I think Biden was asked about it at a conference at a press conference, and his answer was, "Where's the money?" Like, he didn't deny it. He just said, "Where's the money?" Because he probably knows they can't find it because it was funneled through so many different accounts, right? But now I'm digressing a bit. But the point I'm trying to make is that they don't want Robert Kennedy Jr. to be the Democratic nominee. And they certainly don't want Robert Kennedy Jr. to be the president of the United States, right? The Democratic Party does not want that. And so if it looks like he could win, then Gavin Newsom is going to come into the rescue because he is the establishment guy that they would like to see at the top of the ticket. And so that might happen just like it happened in 1968. And again, history doesn't repeat. It often rhymes, especially when you got the word Kennedy in there. The Kennedys just keep popping up at these moments in history. But the key is, who's going to be the Republican nominee? It still looks like it's going to be Donald Trump. I think the Democrats believe that it's easier to beat Trump than any of the other candidates. But to me, right, Trump is not the best candidate because he's not the most conservative or the most free market. A lot of people think he is. A lot of these Trump supporters, they think he's the extreme right. And he's not. DeSantis is more conservative, more to the right. In fact, Trump is running to the center. Trump is already criticizing DeSantis because he wants to cut government spending, right? So Trump is campaigning like a moderate to a left-winger, right? But then, of course, he wants to claim he's a conservative, but he's getting enough votes because he has a strong core constituency. I mean, I think that DeSantis would probably be better president and probably a better candidate than Donald Trump, but would he be a game changer? Would he be a Barry Goldwater? I don't think so. Will he even be a Ronald Reagan? I don't think so. It's better than having Joe Biden in there, but it's not going to be a game changer. And neither is Trump. Trump's already proven that he's not going to be a game changer. The thing about Trump being elected or reelected rather than DeSantis is that it's going to piss off so many people. But the country would erupt. I mean, if Trump was sent back into the White House. I mean, as bad as things are right now, at least socially and all that. I mean, this would just galvanize that and make it even worse. So it probably would be better for everybody to see DeSantis a win. But what this whole thing is exposing is this complete corruption, though, in the process, and the corruption at the federal level. And it's very scary as to what's going to happen when we get this real crash, when we get this real economic collapse, because this is coming. And that's when government is at its worst, when the situation is at its worst, because that's when they're able to usurp even more power. And if they're as corrupt as they are right now, right, when we're relatively at peace and there's relative prosperity, not that there is prosperity, but relative to the way things are going to be. If they're this corrupt now, just imagine what's going to happen when it really hits the fan. Anyway, that's it for today's podcast. I will be back next week. Hopefully I'll be feeling better. I did catch something early on my trip to London, and I'm feeling even worse now. So having a hard time talking if that hasn't come through in the podcast. But hopefully I'll be better next week. And I'll be back with more podcasts, and I'll be able to talk about the Fed's rate hike or lack of rate hike and what is said on the podcast. In fact, I'm going to be on Fox Business with Liz Clayman the day of the decision. So I'll be talking about it then. Oh, and one more thing I wanted to remind everybody about, and that is the auction for the ordinals, the painting and the ordinals. I forgot to mention that because a lot of people, might have been skeptical about it because of the Twitter hacking. So we ended up delaying the auction. It was going to be tonight, and we delayed it by a week. So it's next Friday in New York City. Go to onemarketprice.com/golden to get the details on the event. If you're in the New York area, love to have you come down to the gallery, spend some time there. If you want to bid on either the original oil painting or any of the 50 numbered and signed prints and the accompanying ordinals, you can do that on the website. You just got to go there and you got to register to bid. The other announcement I wanted to make is I noticed that a lot of people didn't listen to or watch my last podcast. I mean, it looks like it's got about 50,000 views on YouTube. We've been getting 90, 100,000 or more per YouTube. And I think the reason is that we weren't able to announce this podcast on Twitter because I had no access to my Twitter account, which, by the way, since my last podcast, I am back on Twitter. So you don't have to follow me on Facebook or Instagram. I mean, you can if you want, but I'm back on Twitter. I'm tweeting. I was able to get my account back with the help of some engineers. I actually ended up having to use some connections to go directly to some top engineers. That's how hard it was for me to get my account back. Right? It should be easier, but at least I got it back. But because I didn't have the account, I wasn't able to tweet out the podcast. So maybe some people who normally would have seen that podcast on YouTube didn't because they didn't get the message on Twitter. So if you're watching this one and you didn't watch the last one, go back and watch it because I think it was a very good podcast. I really made some very significant points. I think the people who watched it really enjoyed it. We got a lot of likes on that podcast relative to the number of views. So if you're one of the people that missed it because it wasn't on Twitter, well, go back and watch it when you're finished with this one.